Young activists from more than 150 countries have decided to skip school and take to the streets in order to demand more aggressive policy from lawmakers pertaining to climate change. I love this, especially when you look at the demographics, you see how young they are. According to the Washington Post in London, thousands marched past 10 Downing Street and the Houses of Parliament, some holding aloft signs that read, "Winter is not coming, and I'm taking time out of my lessons to teach you." I love that salty last one, that's really good. Martha Lickman, a 13-year-old Londoner, clutched a sign that read, "Oceans are rising and so are we." And just seeing this type of activism from young people really fires me up. We sent John Idarola and Emma Vigeland to some of these demonstrations. Emma's in New York, John is in Los Angeles. Let's start off with Emma in New York and see what some of these activists had to say.
It shouldn't have to take us all together screaming for climate change for us to help our world. You know, like this should be normal.
I am eternally frustrated with the decisions that our lawmakers are making because it is putting us, our lives, our children's lives, and our grandchildren's lives at risk. And they can't see that because they're old. And as like a young person, and we're all relatively young people, we know this is the one chance we have before we're gone.
Our planet is dying, and we are doing nothing to save it. We need to march to help save our planet.
All the adults are helping us with our future, like going to college and stuff, but there's no point if there's not gonna be an earth for us to like stay at. We gotta like keep this earth, otherwise there's nothing for us to fight for. I really wanna have kids one day, and I don't think morally, ethically, I could bring a human into the world knowing that this is gonna happen.
I wanna live past 25 on an earth that's inhabitable.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we only have one earth.
You're down for living past 25?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Don't destroy your planet. We want to invade it.
The world is changing, and not in a good way. We need to save our world.
I love this, and I'm really curious to see how right-wing media covers these demonstrations, or if they even cover it at all. Because oftentimes when they do, they try to make these activists look as though they have no idea what they're talking about. They just want to skip school. But these are incredibly smart kids. And they know what's at stake, and it's just so great to see them. I mean, the numbers are insane.
Yes, absolutely, and they have every reason and right to be upset because we all are thinking this as well in terms of, well, are we gonna have kids? Like they're saying 2050 is the cutoff in terms of actual life and being able to survive, and whether you know that or not, is it right to bring a child into this world? There are so many factors and things going on right now with the climate, and the reality is it's not necessarily that they're just old in terms of the decision makers, it's that they're greedy. And they're looking for ways to fill their coffers as opposed to ways to keep us all alive. And having these young kids out here, man, I was on a playground or I was hanging out with my friends when I was a kid. These kids are out here trying to save us. They should be able to live their lives, but the reality is they may not have anything to live for.
Yeah, right wing will have the headline will say, you know, smart ass kids talk back or something, right?
Paid child actors.
But you know
how they like that one.
I really hope I got young kids. I feel that my kids are way further advanced than I am in their thought process, and I hope we can learn from them. The one thing that I'm a little worried about is I remember as a kid in the early '80s we were writing letters to President Reagan asking him to stop the nuclear race. And it feels like we've come full circle, and you got a guy now like Trump who's like saying, "Can we nuke storms and stuff?" I mean, it's crazy, right? Or even like gun violence. I did my college thesis on it. That was 20 years ago, and here we are. We're still in the same situation, if not worse. And so I hope that what these kids are doing actually has an effect. I wish, as a society, we could maybe reframe our energies. You know, my kids play a lot of sports, which is good. They play club sports, but what about like instead of club soccer, what if you had like club climate change protesting or something? You know what I'm saying? What if every
like
week,
a political activism class?
Every week you're like, we're gonna go protest.
Yeah,
you know, I mean that's kind of cool. And I wish kids at a younger age could actually vote, because I think then we might get some progressive things happening, but unfortunately they can't.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because a lot of them are underage, they're not old enough to vote, so that's a great point. But there was a report I was watching on TV where a reporter on the ground asked, like, how many of you here are old enough to vote? and a lot of people raised their hands. And so people are fired up, and I hope that these are the types of issues that encourage people to go to the polls and vote for the right candidate who has the right plan in place. Now, with that said, John Iadarola went to the demonstrations in Los Angeles and spoke to some of those demonstrators about which candidate they felt was the best in helping to combat climate change. Take a look.
On the Democratic side, we had that climate town hall. Some of them have plans. Who do you trust on this issue?
Well, obviously you trust Bernie. That's my answer.
Any of the others?
Oh yeah, Warren. I mean, I trust them all to some degree. Less so with the more moderates, Delaney and so forth. But and Biden.
Whether it's a Democrat or a Republican who gets in the office next time, please just address the issue.
I've been following Bernie since the last election, so yeah, I'm still a Bernie fan.
Any of the others, or is it Bernie all the way on this?
I also like Elizabeth Warren, but I think definitely Bernie is on the top of my list.
If you look at the most recent debates, that it was one of the biggest topics, if not the biggest topic in past debates, probably in the past like 10 years.
Yeah. Anyone stand out?
I mean, I just like the way that Bernie Sanders handles everything because he's very clear cut. It's to the point. It's very simple language.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of like political hoopla.
So one of the reasons why John kept asking any other candidates is because he kept interviewing people who mentioned Bernie.
Yes.
And he wanted some diversity in the answers and had a tough time getting it. So we didn't cut out interviews where people were endorsing other candidates. It's just he didn't run or come across people who wanted other candidates. Or mentioned other candidates, I should say.
Well, it's good that every one of them, it's on their agenda, and it's again horrific when we see Trump say things like, I'm the best for the environment, I love the environment, I'm gonna roll back the California regulations, and he's, bigger cars are better for the environment, because then you're safer, and if you get hit, I mean, the stuff he puts out there is totally nonsensical. So the good news is we have moved at least to the point where every candidate on the Democratic side knows that this is an issue that we have to prioritize.
It's actually kind of pathetic because every candidate will acknowledge it.
Yes.
But in terms of action and a plan put forward to actually combat this, I mean, you have one candidate that has the most robust plan in place, right? And that is Bernie Sanders with the Green New Deal. And that's probably the reason why these activists mentioned him as the candidate they prefer.
Yeah, and it makes sense that, and the population that comes out there and is more willing to speak up would be Bernie followers, because as you mentioned, he has the most robust plan. The thing is, it's like, as you also mentioned, the fact that somebody needs to do something. And unfortunately, I find that the moderate candidates, or the candidates that are more aligned with corporations, that's the big problem we have here, is trying to keep them happy yet keep the earth sustained. That's not how it's gonna work. You need someone who's willing to check these corporations and stand up to them, and that's really Sanders or Warren, that's no one else. And of course, that's probably why large corporations and mainstream media despise those two.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.